Okay. All right, everyone. Well, good afternoon. Welcome to Election Day in New York. I hope everyone in the New York side went out and voted. Very important part of democracy. Um, my name is Travis Terry, and I have the privilege of acting as the president of Capalino, which is a full-service government relations and business advisory firm focused on helping clients on all matters like permitting, procurement, economic incentives, and dealing with the general insanity of New York. Um, Today's Future of New York webinar is a fascinating one, in my opinion, as we are actually not just talking about New York, but we're also focusing on the economic recovery of Los Angeles as well. Should just note that the future of New York, today's Future of New York, is a part of a series of webinars that Capilino has organized with various partners around business and how to do business in the city and to help our businesses and institutions. All of these can be found on our website, Capalino.com. I couldn't be more excited. Today, we're teaming up with a phenomenal firm that we've had the privilege of working with for nearly a decade. There's so many similarities between New York and Los Angeles, and the firm of Englinger, Nave, and Allen is as good as they get. They are a government relations and public affairs firm where a multitude of businesses, nonprofits, institutions go to help them thrive in LA and in the state of California. And I can personally say that I know a number of our clients who have worked with them have been really happy with the work that they've provided. So thank you for joining us. We're joined today by two good friends, Marcus Allen and Kelly Hawkins, both of whom are partners in the firm. Kelly heads up EKA's health initiatives team. She formerly served as the chief operating officer of the National Health Foundation, was an official at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and served in the mayor's office in L.A. as executive director of the Commission on the Status of Women. Marcus has a long history, successful history in public affairs, also served in the mayor's office as chief deputy controller and deputy chief of staff in charge of operations and finance. And finally, I'm delighted to really be joined by one of my extraordinary colleagues, Capilino Adam Buchanan. He's part of our business strategy and procurement team and is a former head of procurement at the New York City Department of Citywide Administrative Services. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. Really excited to jump in. That's a little bit of housekeeping real quick for our audience. For about the first 45 minutes or so, the four of us are going to chat, try to tell you as much as we can, try to be as frank and forthcoming about the challenges and opportunities in New York and LA. And then we'll turn it over to audience questions. If you have some questions, please place them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And at about 2:45, we'll start taking questions off of that and getting the panelists to respond. Also, just say, keep looking at the chat in the screen as well, because we will periodically be putting up reports and links for you to learn more. All right, so at this point, Kelly and Marcus, I would love to turn it over to you. Adam and I will talk a little bit about New York, but maybe just turn it over to you to give a quick introduction and tell us how things are going in LA.
Thank you. Kelly?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Travis and Adam, for having us. Kelly Hawkins, one of the partners at EKA here in Los Angeles. I'm really excited to be on this afternoon with you all. The wonderful thing about Los Angeles and New York City is that we are global destinations. And it's always exciting when we get to showcase and highlight what the innovations are occurring in our region. Many innovations have been birthed out of both cities, so looking forward to today's discussion. On the topic of new administrations, here in Los Angeles, obviously, we elected the first African-American female mayor, Karen Bass. And for new administrations, there are new opportunities that avail themselves to approach some of the structural challenges and impediments that we have been facing and approach them in a different way, often not necessarily new ideas or programs, but new innovative approaches to the work. We can start with the Mayor's Inside Safe initiative. This is an initiative set to move our unhoused neighbors living on the streets of Los Angeles and place them into temporary housing with the support of wraparound services. To date, the mayor has brought in over 1,600 Angelinos, as well as connect them to temporary transitional housing, and then we'll connect them to permanent supportive housing solutions, accompanied with our most critical piece of that, which are the wraparound social services. This mayor has really looked at how do we also not just support the social well-being of these unhoused individuals, but also really looked at what are we doing about our own housing stock, looking at housing creation. When we look at the adaptive reuse model that she is even thinking about, that the city is thinking about, converting office buildings into housing stock for our community members, that is just one way that we are doing things a little differently. And then as we look at our unhoused population, another aspect of that is getting these individuals, as well as our other underemployed individuals, back into the workforce. Both the city and the county have experienced, high vacancy rates. We definitely have some challenges, impediments to hiring. And really, the city and the county have both kind of come together, but also partnered with labor as well as the private sector. When we saw the Great Resignation occur in 2020, not only did it impact the private sector, but it also had its impacts on the public sector as well. And so, working hand in hand, the city and county are both looking to employ individuals. As a part of that conversation, even around employment, is how do we even get folks trained up into these jobs? Do we have accessible training opportunities? When we look at the digital divide, where do we have some challenges for some of our residents that may not have access to Wi-Fi in their communities or in their office spaces, and what the city and the county are doing, working in partnership with the school district. We are also seeing the county as well take some innovative approaches to our prevention services that are needed to not just support those in our unhoused population, but in general, how do we provide services to the general county population? When we look at CalAIM, that is our state's Medi-Cal waiver program. The idea is this is an extension of what was called the whole person care model. And what it allows practitioners or our healthcare system to do is to go beyond just treating your body and its biological issues, but really going around and thinking about what are those community supports that we need to put in place to ensure that you are thriving as an individual and community. But as a part of a lot of these initiatives, technology, you'll start to see, has become a common thread throughout all of this work, whether that is connecting the residents to resources. As we just learned about our mayor's most recent executive directive focus on service delivery reform, utilizing our My 311, in some areas is My 211, but that portal to really connect city residents and county residents to those most needed services. Another piece of the conversation that I think we, sometimes forget about as we're navigating these waters is our business community, but really that small business support, right? How are these cities addressing access to opportunities for small businesses? Do you need to actually have an office space in the city of Los Angeles, in the county of Los Angeles? What does that look like for opportunities to partner you with the local government opportunities? So I will pause there. Marcus, I'm not sure if you have anything else you would like to add.
I think you covered most of it. I think the other big theme that's running across the region is equitable resource allocation. It's a big theme not only in LA City, LA County, but Long Beach and also the transportation agency and the school district. Elected officials now are increasingly focused on not just plain outright budgeting, but the equitable distribution of resources and the efficient distribution of services across the region. I think that's pretty much it. Travis, you want to turn back to any broad themes back in New York?
Sure. Thanks, Marcus. Thanks, Kelly. I mean, that's a really great wrap up. I mean, it just seems like so many similar challenges between two cities and thoughts. Yeah, New York definitely has its challenges. There's no question about it. We have housing challenges and homelessness challenges and budgetary challenges. But if I were a gambling person, I would put all my chips on New York. I think that there's a lot of good themes, and despite all the gloom and doom and all these stories, there's so many aspects of what's going on in New York that make it special. So, for example, the experiences. People want to be here. New York City is the finance, media, international affairs, arts and culture. Well, we can debate that maybe a little later. Arts and culture, they're not. We used to be sports, not so much. Although I will say it was nice to see the Knicks beat the Clippers last night. That's a side story. But we are all of these things in New York, and people want to come here and live here and experience our museums on Broadway and the vast diversity of food around all the 5 boroughs. So that's a really important aspect that we continue to really engage on. The talent is extraordinary. We are one of the largest college towns in the world. We have 120 colleges, including major everything from Ivy League to the nation's largest municipal college network, CUNY. CUNY does some incredible things, really educating the folks in New York and providing some terrific talent for businesses looking to be here. New York's big, as you probably know. We have a gross metropolitan product that is approximately $2 trillion. That's larger than the states of Texas and Florida. So take that, Governors DeSantis and Abbott. Larger than Australia and South Korea. So the economic activity going here is huge. And then just going back to education, our public school system is so large that actually 1 in approximately 200 American citizens are New York City public school students, 1.2 million students in our public schools. So it is a very large place, as many know. I would just say the other encouraging aspects, there's tremendous amount of investment in public transportation. There's billions of dollars in pipelines. We've added, just over the last 20 years or so, we've added a 7-line extension to the west side of Manhattan. We've brought in Long Island Railroad into Grand Central Terminal. We've invested billions of dollars in the Gateway project that creates a new tunnel in case that goes. I mean, there's a whole series of things that are going on. Just yesterday, Senator Schumer, and we love Senator Schumer, and him being the leader is very helpful to New York. But him and US DOT announced over $9 billion in Northeast Amtrak corridor investments, of which a lot go into the New York region. So there's a lot to be excited about around what is going. And we're also, I suggest that, a lot of people think of New York as just Manhattan and its core and what you see in the movies. But there's been a lot of investment outside of Manhattan, into Queens, into Brooklyn, into the Bronx, in Staten Island, to create additional economic development hubs out there. And the final thing I'll just touch on is public safety. I think that comes up a lot. And the perception is not exactly related to the reality. New York City is a very safe place to be. I think there was studies even showing that Queens County is the 5th safest county in the entire country. We have the lowest homicide rate per 100,000 people within the country. Our healthcare system is very good. So there's a lot to be encouraged about. Kelly, you touched on AI and technology and innovation. I mean, that's going to be sort of an interesting thing to watch. And there's been a lot of investment in facilitating the technology community here in New York. And the final thing I would just say, which is also encouraging as you think about New York City, is the relationship between the mayor and the governor. And I think they both deserve a lot of credit because we don't traditionally have a mayor and a governor that are always seeing eye to eye, but particularly when it comes to things like economic development, and a pro-business agenda, they've done some really terrific work together. And a lot of that, I would just say, and we'll put it in the chat, is spelled out in their combined New York plan, which really looks at a future vision of New York City going forward. So very exciting stuff. I want to sort of talk through a couple aspects that both cities are facing. And Adam, I want to bring you into the conversation because procurement has become such an important thing, and both cities buy a lot of goods and services. And I was wondering, Adam, if you could touch on how New York is handling that and what some of the best practices are there. And then Marcus and Kelly, great to get your perspective on LA as well.
Sure. Thanks, Travis, and really nice to be joining you and Kelly and Marcus. So last year, Travis citing some just unbelievable figures regarding New York City's economy. Its procurement is kind of no less staggering. In fiscal year 23, New York City procured $41.1 billion worth of goods and services through approximately 147,000 transactions. That is a staggering amount of money that the city spends, and it's up 9% from FY22, which in which it spent $37.9 billion. So the city spends a tremendous amount of money, and the city spends a tremendous amount of money not only with kind of traditional businesses, but also New York City has been incredibly committed over the years to its minority and women-owned business enterprise program. And last year, it spent $1.42 billion with city-certified MWBEs, which is its highest award total since the inception of the program. And it increased its utilization rate by nearly 5%, and it's now up to 27.9%. Up from 22.9% last year. So, again, not only is New York spending a tremendous amount of money with kind of traditional businesses, it's also spending a tremendous amount of money with minority and women business enterprises as well. So, some of the best practices for getting into New York City procurement. Look, it's not for the faint of heart. New York City's procurement rules extend hundreds of pages. Its contracts are also hundreds of pages. I think in terms of best practices, the most important thing, or one of the most important things that I would stress to companies that are looking to do business in New York City, to break into the market, to increase their market share in the city, particularly with New York City government, you got to have boots on the ground. You need to be here. You either need to be stationed here or you need to be willing to come here often, because a lot of where we see companies have success in the city is not only winning prime contracts. Everybody wants a prime contract. That's really a great, it's a great vehicle for growth in your company, but there's only so many prime contracts to go around, but New York City is so complex, and the projects that it enters into are so complex that it requires a ton of subcontracting and a ton of partnering. So if you're not here, then you're not making those connections with the companies that are winning the prime contracts. You can be a sub to a sub. So, again, just being here is incredibly important. Attending the pre-bid conferences in person, attending these networking events that the city puts out, particularly for MWBEs. Each agency in the city puts on several events per year where not only do you get to meet the folks that are running the procurement shops in these agencies, but you're also meeting the subject matter experts within the agencies, and you're also getting a chance to network with a bunch of different companies that you could potentially joint venture with, or you could potentially subcontract with, or they could become a subcontractor for you too if you want a prime contract. So again, just being here is really, really important. We found that another really effective strategy for our clients is getting a look ahead at what the city is going to be buying over the next fiscal year. So New York City puts out a lot of information regarding what it's going to purchase in the upcoming fiscal year. Doesn't always make it so easy to find. That's why firms like Capalino and EKA kind of exist. We know where to look for this information. So getting an understanding of where the city's going to spend all this money is incredibly important. So you can prepare. Responding to solicitations is not the easiest thing to do in the world. It's a heavy lift, particularly for small and medium-sized companies. You can't chase every single opportunity out there. You have to be strategic in where you're going to put your efforts. Similarly, I think researching past procurements and obtaining all the information that's out there and that's publicly available is incredibly important. Knowing who you're up against, knowing who the incumbent is, knowing contract pricing, which changes a lot. It's kind of easy to find the winning bid and information on that, but the majority of city contracts have price adjustment clauses, and vendors are constantly asking for price increases, and pricing is pegged to various indices that the city follows. So just because you've gotten your hands on a bid from 3 years ago that has pricing in it doesn't mean that's actually what the city's paying for the goods and services that you're finding at that moment. And then the last thing I would say is, look, if you're gonna do business with a municipality, New York City in particular requires that all of the vendors and companies that it partners up with are what's called responsible companies, and that means that you have the requisite big business integrity and the requisite track record to warrant use of taxpayer funds on your goods and services. So cleaning those issues up before you try to break into the market is really important. It becomes almost an exercise in disclosure because the city is very good at researching business integrity issues. In fact, the city has an agency dedicated to researching the entities with which it does business, called the Department of Investigation. So, you're not going to kind of hide your tax liens. You're not going to kind of hide your negative press. You're not going to hide, your OSHA violations, that kind of stuff. So getting your ducks in a row kind of before you try to do business with the city is incredibly important. And knowing how to present, any kind of adverse information that the city might come across is really, really critical. Because again, it's, everybody makes mistakes. People have issues. There are disputes. This is a complex business environment. And again, the city's not looking for squeaky clean people. They're looking for people who have an explanation for some of the wrong, some of the things that have happened in the past that they may have done a little differently this time around. So Travis, I would say that those are some of the best practices for when it comes to doing business with New York City.
Right. Thank you, Adam. That's very, very helpful. Kelly, Marcus, how about in LA? I'm sure it's smooth and simple and everything is piece of cake.
I'll take this one. It's very similar. I think a lot of the points that Adam raised are also applicable in Los Angeles. But I think the first point I think I'd like to raise or point out is that it's just not LA City or LA County. You're talking about 88 cities within LA County. You're talking about a school district. You're talking about a transportation agency or authority, and easily you're talking about over $100 billion in spending authority and service needs and requirements. So again, people tend to think about Los Angeles as either LA City or LA County, but there's so much more here. And I think the other thing that Adam touched on, I think that's also critical, is that it's important to be present, right? You have to be here. There are rules in place with regard to local business enterprises, SBE, DBEs, but even more than that, I think it's important to understand how your service and or product can help improve government. That's
Right.
really the challenge. And that's what we really try to impress upon the companies that we interact with. How can you help? How can you help a government official or department head solve a problem that they have through your service? Kelly, am I missing anything?
Nope, you touched it all.
Okay.
I mean,
Sorry.
the only thing that I would probably add on to that is that what we really try to do is give the companies we're working with, the organizations we're working with, that heads up on the policy conversations that are taking place, right? No one
Right.
is really sitting, piddling their thumbs watching the city council meeting, committee meetings, and board of soups meetings. But obviously, because of the nature of our work, we do. So I think it's important to understand what the policy conversations are so that you can plug in appropriately. And it's not just a cookie cutter. Oh, I did this in New York, so I can do this in Los Angeles. Well, that may
Right.
not be the case.
Right. Right.
Yeah, Kelly, that's such a good point that you bring up regarding, monitoring what's going on in the local legislative bodies, right? Because, the New York City Council, for instance, is constantly passing local laws that's telling the administration to do this or to do that. And kind of knowing what's going on from a policy perspective, and that's something that Capalino does for its clients as well, is to monitor these public hearings and these meetings that occur on these bills that are put out there. If the city council is asking the New York City Department of Transportation to start doing something, then you can read between the lines and figure out, hey, if NYC DOT needs to start doing X, it's going to need to buy Y or Z in order to accomplish X. And so, now you're kind of ahead of the game. And now
Right.
you can kind of see around that corner where that procurement might be coming from. And that can be really valuable intel for companies trying to do business with the city.
It's great to have all your perspectives too, because you've been on the other side procuring. So it's good to really have that perspective around the advice you're getting. I also wanted to just turn attention to infrastructure. Obviously, big topic these days. Federal government spending extraordinary sums of money on infrastructure, thanks to IIJA. And Kelly, Marcus, would love to hear from your end about what some of those projects in LA are.
Thanks, Travis. I think what we'd like to do is maybe bring in one of our other colleagues from EKA.
Sure.
Turn to Jaime De La Vega. Jaime's a senior executive director for EKA and has been very knowledgeable and focused on transportation. Jaime, are you there?
Yep, here we go. Hi, Jaime. Good to see you.
Guys. Hey, great to see you. How are you guys?
Good,
Hey,
good. Thanks for joining us.
Just a 30-second bio on me. I used to be the CEO of the City of Los Angeles Department of Transportation, former deputy mayor to two mayors dating back to the mid-90s. Was also on the Metro Board of Directors, Metro Link Board of Directors, and was budget director for the city attorney. In the area of infrastructure, looking at only the major agencies, in this year alone, fiscal year 24, different agencies in the county are spending over $17 billion just on construction projects. That's everything from the County Department of Public Works, the LA Unified School District, LA Metro, the city's Water and Power Department, the city's Airport Department, ports of LA and Long Beach, the LA Housing Services Authority, etc. And what's interesting about most of the budget is that money is self-sustaining. We have a number of voter-approved sales tax measures in areas such as homelessness, school construction at both the high school, secondary, primary level, as well as community college district, and over $3 billion a year of ongoing revenue in transportation alone.
Hmm.
And then as it relates to the ports, the airport, and water and power, all of those departments are not general fund supported. They generate their own income, similar to New York. So the revenue sources supporting construction in Los Angeles are very robust and sustainable for the foreseeable future. Marcus, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that that covers it. And again, like your colleagues have noted, Travis, there are many challenges and constraints around participation. But again, it's important to be present to understand how your company can be of assistance in terms of these capital projects, and also to partner with local companies. That's a big requirement for most capital projects across both the city and the county.
And we also try to help clients understand the organizational culture at each agency, the differing politics, whether it's a municipal jurisdiction, a standalone agency, or a large city department,
Mhm.
and the politics behind that as well. Different agencies have different views on procurement and service delivery models. So we're either trying to match up clients and their services with agencies where they can compete well, or we try to help clients convince departments to procure in a different way.
Right. And to that point, oftentimes it's important to understand each agency's or locality's fiscal constraint to understand project delivery methodology and requirements. Sometimes design build is preferred. Sometimes P3s are preferred. It just depends on each agency and their resource mix and constraints they're facing.
Right. Yeah. So, a lot going on in LA. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. Thank you, Jaime. I really appreciate that update.
Yep,
Very,
of
very
course.
helpful. And on the New York side, we are spending, I mean, just the New York City capital budget is multiple billions of dollars a year, and that goes into everything from schools and hospitals and museums, social service agencies, parks. And some of that is government built. Some of that is built through a P3 where a museum built it, or hospital, et cetera. And you know, a lot of what we do just in the area of infrastructure is to remind people that it's one thing to get an allocation, it's completely other to actually get your check. And that process could be just as difficult as not. I would just also say that, you know, there's just I mentioned this, I touched on this a little earlier, there's just an incredible amount of infrastructure investment on regional projects going on that are so important to the city of New York. And I say regional because it's very hard to take a look at New York City without thinking about its interconnection with Long Island, Westchester, Connecticut, and New Jersey. Because so many workers live in those areas, come into the city, they visit the city for restaurants and for arts and culture and everything else. And there was actually, if everybody has a chance to take a look at the regional plan associations, various reports on infrastructure, but most recently, the sort of economic impact of working in the city while living in New Jersey and Connecticut. Very important stuff. And gets to, I know we might touch on this a little later on the housing side, but we're also, you know, investing a tremendous amount in coastal resiliency. And then we have multiple train and public transit projects underway. The most probably well-known and probably getting a lot of money, although we still got a little ways to go, is the Gateway Project, which is actually a modernization and upgrade of the transit corridor between Newark and into Penn Station, and is absolutely vital to the health of the region. You know, we have some deteriorating assets as a consequence of some of the hurricanes and things of that nature, that if they went out of business or they were shut down for any reasons, could just be disastrous and really affect the local economy. So it's great that so many people from the president on down are really focused on that project. But we also have, you know, something called the Interborough Express, which connects Queens and Brooklyn via a new train. That's a great idea. We've invested in Long Island Railroad into Grand Central, the 7 train out to Hudson Yards. We're bringing in trains back into Penn Station. There's a lot of conversation now about the future of Penn Station and building that. We've built Moynihan Train Hall recently. So there is a tremendous amount of public transit investment going on. And it's really important too, because when you actually look at studies around the new way in which people work, the number one challenge is that commute. It's not just being in the office, it's that experience from leaving your home, getting to the office. And if you can make that smoother, if you make that quicker, you're just improving the quality of life and making it even more reason to stay in the area, to visit the area, to work in the area. So those types of projects are really important. The last thing I would just say on this is, it's a controversial topic, is the implementation of congestion pricing. And hopefully that will come in next year. I'm personally a big believer in it. I think it's vitally important, whether you're a transit rider, because add a little over $1 billion into capital projects for the MTA over here. But even if you're a driver, it should loosen things up and allow you to drive in. Might cost you a little more, but that experience becomes a lot better. So it's a vital program that's helping enable regional transit.
And Travis, you want to talk about the work also that's going on at the 3 Port Authority airports in the region?
Oh yeah, yep. Another important thing is we've been a tremendous amount of investment into, as Adam mentioned, LaGuardia, Newark, and JFK. I don't know if anyone's flown into LaGuardia, but it is absolutely night and day between what it was 10 years ago when, or 15 years ago, when then Vice President Biden walked in and said it looked like a third world airport, to what it is now, where it's actually an enjoyable experience to fly in. And very similar type of work is now being taking place through a P3 at JFK and Newark. So that's another really important infrastructure investment that's happening in the region. I wanted to, a hot topic these days has been how both cities are handling the influx of migrants. And Kelly and Marcus, I'd love to hear your all's perspective of how LA is approaching this situation.
Absolutely. I think Los Angeles is a city that is welcoming, right? It wants to be supportive of the population, but we also recognize that we have competing resource pools, right? Or those that are in need of the same resources. And so the city and county collectively have done their part to really look at how to ensure equitable distribution of those services. I think one of the things that we as a region have to be thinking about, though, is what is the long-term impact on our residents that we're receiving some of those similar services that some of our migrant arrivals are receiving. And so it's a balance between the two. But I also think it's a unique opportunity for technology companies, right? How are we ensuring the tracking of resources, any federal resources that might be coming down to support that work? I think in terms of just connecting the resources to the various regions, and ensuring that equitable distribution is important.
Mm-hmm. Marcus, anything you want to add?
No, I think that's it. It's about resource allocation, and in Los Angeles, LA County has always been inviting and focused on immigration and immigrants. So I think that's consistent.
Yeah, and just on the New York side, I think you feel very much the same way. I mean, the good thing is, New York, I'd say 2 quick things. I mean, one is, or 3 things. You probably say a lot of things, but let's focus on 3. One is, New York's a very compassionate place, and we have a really incredible social infrastructure that is working day and night, even before the influx of asylum seekers, that works day and night helping immigrants. And we get on regular years, New York usually sees about 100,000 immigrants into the city, and we have like I said, a very important social infrastructure that helps with food and housing and jobs and all the other needs that are required. So that's one point. The second point I would just make is it is short term, and then the third point I would just make is long term. On the short term side, it certainly has had budgetary implications. It's certainly had political implications and bandwidth implications too. I mean, there's just a lot of people in government now that are focusing on finding sites to build up temporary housing and the increase in services and things of that nature. So there's that short-term impact. The other, on the long-term side, Kelly, I agree with you. I think what we've found anecdotally, and there's some studies going on this now, is this is a very good thing for the region. These are and you know, our clients have certainly worked with these populations. These are incredibly good people that are just looking to make a good life for themselves, contribute to society, contribute economically, generally come to New York because our vast diversity, and we have, you know, pretty much every culture around the world has a community in New York. And when you look at the history of New York and how it's evolved, immigration has always helped take us to the next level. And I have no doubt that in the long run, this will be a fantastic thing for the city of New York and for the region. And you know, I think when we look back decades from now about this, we'll see this as the next, you know, sort of boost for New York. It's not to say it doesn't have short-term challenges, but from a long-term perspective, you know, we will have a new influx of great thinkers and civic leaders and entrepreneurs that are going to just make the city so much better. Do you want to turn economic incentives for a second? Marcus, Kelly, I would love for you and your team to maybe talk a little bit about some of the economic incentives being offered in LA, in case I'm sure there's some folks on this webinar that are interested in launching a business in LA and what can be done to help.
Kelly, would you take a minute and just maybe go over the mayor's new executive directive for small business? And while we can also, Travis, maybe take me off camera and loop in my colleague, Jeff McConnell,
Sure.
One of our partners. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was definitely one of the more recent efforts through the mayor's office. One of her more recent executive directives was, how do we make Los Angeles a business-friendly town? And really more so on the small business side, right? And so she has definitely worked with her team to really look at where are there opportunities to streamline certain projects, whether it's permitting or whether it's business license. Good timing, Jeff. So
Hey, Jeff.
I think whether it's the business piece, but also the economic piece for those that are housing developers, right? We have a need, which is housing. There's affordable housing developers. So Jeff, our partner who leads our land use and planning practice, can give more insight into that. But that's kind of where we started.
Yeah, so there are a couple of existing programs that people often use. So if you're building a hotel in and around downtown, there are ways to get reductions or I should say TOT rebates. So transit occupancy tax rebates is a way to offset the cost of the project, not maybe penciling natively on its own. That same method also applies to many projects that are built in the downtown area that actually can purchase floor area from the city, which is another way to sort of increase density through an economical transaction. And then the most of folks are actually using what we call density bonuses as a way to increase the density of their projects in exchange for the addition of some affordable housing. Unfortunately, there are not substantial avenues that you guys have in New York in terms of tax rebates on sort of the 80-20 deals that have historically been done there. Although I think both of our cities are looking at, especially as it relates to the adaptive reuse program, how do you make those pencil and what incentives can you bring to the table to make those happen? I think we're seeing them in some other cities, in Minneapolis and some other places, that big cities are looking at ways to convert those commercial properties into housing. But at the moment, we're still a little stuck in the how do you make it pencil sort of aspect of it.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I mean, again, it's so interesting to see how both cities are challenged in the same way. I mean, you know, so much of what's been thought about is, you know, what is New York? I'm sure just like LA, what does New York look like in 20 years? And if you have a vision for New York, and that's where the mayor and the governor's plan come in, then what does it take? What are the policy changes, regulation changes that it takes to get there? Honestly, I don't think anybody has actually fully figured that out. I will say, at least on the New York side, we have about as brilliant economic development team as you could have. Certainly Mayor Adams has committed a lot of attention on this. His deputy mayor for economic development and workforce development, I would just say, Maria Torres Springer, what was great was they combined the two. So when you look at economic and tax incentives in New York, a lot of that's related to workforce development and job creation. In fact, just last week or the week before, the mayor announced that we are at an all-time high in job creation. We've recovered over 1 million jobs since COVID, which is really exciting. I think a credit to everything that the mayor, the deputy mayor, and our head of economic development, by the way, was on another webinar with Capalino. Andrew Kimball was on, talking about their vision is so important. And
Yeah,
like I said, a lot of that comes. Yeah.
We
Go ahead, Jeff.
recently, so several years ago, we ended our
Yeah.
community redevelopment agencies, which were our best way of sort of bringing tax increment back into projects. We
Yep.
do have a state program called EIFD and Enhanced Infrastructure Financing Districts, which people are beginning to utilize as a way to bring tax increment back into the conversation for economic redevelopment, as
Right.
well as for other projects. We're seeing it for transit projects and some other things. So that's
Right.
one of the areas where LA is beginning to take a look to try to bring these extra capital dollars into projects.
And I would add that New York City has been including over the last several years what's called the Hire NYC program in its procurements to encourage companies that are contracting with the city to hire locally. It's really important. It gives New York City residents a leg up in the hiring process on projects that are happening in and around their communities. So it's really, it's great to see the city kind of throw its weight behind and put its money where its mouth is when it comes to actual procurement.
We do have local hire programs required on almost every major construction project that there is in the LA area. So it's a straight up requirement upon a contractor that a portion of their workforce will be hired from not only just LA County, but from specific zip codes around where the project is being built.
Right. And Jeff, do you think that imagine there's a lot of attention on converting old office spaces into residential?
Yeah, a ton. And I think people are still trying to figure out the how, right? We have, unfortunately, a lot of high rises that were built in the sort of late 80s or early 90s that right before we had an economic crisis here in the LA area, and the floor plates for those are very large, and so trying to divvy them up into workable size units that still have air and light is very difficult, and so in some people start to look at that and they struggle to figure it out. It's not very easy to drill a hole through the middle of it. We did a lot of adaptive reuse earlier in the 2000s in what we call our old bank district. And so many of our historic buildings in the downtown area have been redeveloped as housing, but they had a very different construction type as well as layout. And so a lot more windows, a lot more availability to create those floor plans that allowed for people to have access to air and light. Furthermore, the building code continues to be, an ever increasing complexity upon this effort. And so when you're trying to take a building that was designed to move people in and out for office space and all of a sudden turn it into something that people are living in with washers and dryers and kitchens and stoves, it can become very complicated very quickly. And so as much as people want to look at it, especially those people who are holding, B and C quality office buildings, which have in downtown LA, become very vacant sites, it's still a leap too far to make at this moment unless we get some financial incentives coming to bear.
We are having the exact same. I think I've been on 2 of those conversations just today. The conversion of commercial space, because what we've seen here a lot is that there's a flight to luxury, and the Class A buildings around transit hubs are doing fantastic. And they're leasing up space and people want to be there. But outside of those areas where you're having well, I should say in Manhattan, there's a lot of Class B and C office buildings that are really struggling. And the city has both initiated what we call the City of Yes rezoning to allow for more mixed use in those areas where there's struggling commercial buildings. To your point, though, it's the penciling out of some of these deals. So like in Manhattan, we have what's called a 12 FAR cap for residential, which we're hoping will get lifted it's got to be lifted by the state. Because if you have an 18 FAR building, commercial building, you're not going to tear that down for a 12 FAR building. So residential. So and the tax incentives around affordable housing and things like that have been expired a couple of years ago and expired for political purposes. But now we're realizing, based on a variety of different studies over here, either through the real estate board or through the building congress, the slowdown of housing creation is a challenge. And just that might, I by the way, I know we're talking so much I didn't even realize that we crossed the Q&A line. So if anybody has any burning questions, please put it in there. One question I saw was, can our firms help regionally just outside the cities? I could say for us, for Capalino, we can, depending on the situation. But please reach out to us and we will confer. But EKA, I was just curious, maybe if you want to.
Yes, we can also,
Great.
Depends again on how you define the region, but it is
Right.
LA County and some of the adjacent counties. We have reach through partners that go beyond LA County. Travis, one other thing I want to point to quickly, back to procurement. I think it's also important to note that most solicitations in all the localities we're talking about have bonuses and point requirements in place for disadvantaged business enterprise and local business enterprises. So while we are often aware of that, we go to great efforts to make sure that our clients can get connected to local partners, disadvantaged business enterprises. So while it is a hurdle, we have a network of LBEs and disadvantaged and SBEs to help our clients meet those requirements.
That's great. That's good to know, Marcus. Thank you. I would just, before we end, would love to hear a little bit about tourism. And LA is certainly a activity zone. And you have this event that I've heard coming up in 2028 of the Olympics, where I already told my sister who lives out there I'm going to be staying with her for a couple of weeks. But how is LA sort of preparing for all that?
Sure, I can take it. In terms of LA 2028, I think we're also in a very unique space and place, right? Where we have a much longer runway than most other cities do have. And so I think it's great that the businesses are excited and they're ready to get out here and be a part of the activity. But what I do kind of see, and what I am hearing at least from LA 28, is that they are starting to have those conversations about what will it look like for businesses when we're looking at sustainability, when we're looking at economic empowerment for small businesses. A lot of the small businesses that have done business previously with other cities during the Olympics have also seen their businesses go beyond the scale that they had even anticipated for it. So really getting folks in the mindset of get your ducks in a row now. So if you are a minority owned business, get those certifications in place. But I think where we can probably expect to see some movement is in 2024, 25, as we're getting a little closer. Also, we have World Cup in 2026. That is another opportunity, right?
Yeah, that's
where
gonna be
folks
fun.
are looking at where is there an opportunity for me to plug in to the procurement opportunities. When you look at how our procurement databases are even set up, they are really being built up in anticipation of LA 28, really, as kind of the gold standard. It just so happens that there are other events that will build up to that point.
Marcus, anything you wanted to?
Yeah, big efforts toward, again, we touched on pieces of it. Capital spend is important. There are several e-procurement efforts that are being driven through technology, through some of the big departments within the city and the county. And also, we're probably a little pressed on time, but the city and the county are both focused on broader decarbonization goals and requirements in advance of the Olympics to sort of make sure that as those events occur, that everything is in place and the decarbonization goals are met. If we had a moment, my colleague Alex Charon, partner, could talk a little bit about some of the big work
Go a
that's
few
being
minutes
done
over
around
too.
decarbonization.
Yep.
Alex is a partner in our firm. He focuses on goods movement, transportation and goods movement, and primarily at the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles. Alex, are you there?
Yeah, I would just say just real quickly while Alex joins on too. I mean, we're also very excited for the 26th World Cup. That also happens to coincide with the 250th anniversary of New York City. So that's going to be a special year in New York. It's gonna be a lot of fun. You guys could stay at my place. We can enjoy in all the festivities. The other thing, they're just saying Alex isn't here.
No.
The other thing I would just say too, just on New York's own experience in the Olympics, was we didn't get it in 2012. Just kind of a bummer, but it catalyzed a lot of really good things, particularly from an economic development perspective. And when you look at the west side of Manhattan now, which used to be completely dead and is now this, between Hudson Yards and the High Line and Chelsea and everything else, is now really buzzing. Areas in Queens where they built housing developments, there was a lot. It was used to really catalyze, even Citi Field and Yankee Field, the upgrades of those stadiums and things of that nature. It was really used to catalyze, smart economic development that grew the economy. So I think that, there's some, it's if that you won makes it probably even more exciting. But the Olympics, it's amazing how it does have this attention. And I would just say, just from a tourism perspective, in New York, there's just so much to promote. And thank you to the movie industry for continuing to produce here. But that does a lot of good as well. But we're actually almost basically at pre-COVID tourism levels, which is pretty amazing. There was a question. I want to respect the Q&A that was put in the Q&A chat that I just want to ask, which I think is actually an interesting one. If the 2024 national election results in a change, if the 2024 national election results in a change in administration, how are you preparing your clients for a potential change in infrastructure investment?
Wow, that's a good one. Well, I guess, given that the city and the county and most localities are still digesting the big capital expenditure programs and funds that were made available through the current administration, and they typically work on 3 to 4 year expenditure capital improvement plans, really haven't gone out that far. I think it's enough for many cities in the county just to be able to digest the large influx of federal funds that have been made available recently before they start thinking about, that spigot being turned off and or drying up.
Yeah, and I think, as Jaime mentioned before, just briefly, we are a county that believes in self-help. So we've passed a number of local bond initiatives to fund construction. And so that puts us in a position to access the grants from the federal government at a higher level, right? So if we're paying for 50% of a project, we're going to score better than other jurisdictions do for those grants coming out of DOT.
Right. Yeah, very similar here. I mean, I think anyone would be naive to think that if there was a change in party rule, for lack of a better term, in DC, that wouldn't have impacts into the city. We are pretty resilient, and I think that we're advancing and accelerating a lot of infrastructure projects so that they're vested and sort of almost impossible to turn back, which is going to be really important. But there's also a lot of evidence out there that our two cities drive a lot of the national economy, including into the red states. So they're very reliant on our ability to thrive. So I do think that there is, I mean, look, if there's a change, and we can have a whole other webinar on the politics of all this stuff, but it is, it definitely would slow down the acceleration of these economic engines, in my opinion. So it's going to be interesting to see. I know we're at time. Kelly, Marcus, and Jeff, since you're with us, and Adam, I mean, I just want to, any closing thoughts? Anything you want to add?
The only thing I would add is that, with the new administrations Kelly mentioned earlier, they are really looking at new ways of doing things and changing the status quo. And so now is the time, if you have a great idea, a new product that you think will, make cities run better, make governments work better, deliver services better. Now's the time to have those conversations. There are people who working in the mayor's office and in the county board of supervisors who are excited to try those things out and try something different.
Great. Kelly, Marcus?
The only thing I would say is LA is back open for business.
It's good to hear. Somebody from our city hall said to me the other day, it'd be really great if we just had a big giant sign on City Hall saying we're open for business. We want ideas, we want thoughts, we want creativity.
Yeah, I mean, and I would just add, despite how difficult it can seem, or actually is in fact, to do business with New York City, or I have to imagine the same is true in LA. It's really worth it in the end. If you have a New York City contract, that's something that nobody can ever take away from you, and it's something that you can use to meet kind of almost any minimum requirement around the world. And your contract is backed by the full faith and credit of the city of New York. So, in these tough times, that can be worth a lot. So I do think it's worth it, and it's worth looking into it.
Nope. Thanks, Travis, and all your Capalino colleagues for working on this and helping us all pull this together. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Well, first of all, I just again want to just thank EKA. I mean, you guys have been a great partner. It's great collaborating with you and your teams on some really important subjects and policies and client work, and we're looking forward to a very long-term relationship with you all. And wish we had your weather at this point. I know we can't make that happen over the next couple months, but just again, Marcus, Kelly, fantastic job today. Adam, fantastic job today. Thank you so much, and we'll see everybody soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.